right, so hi everyone, I'm Nancy. I'm a program manager on the Office platform team. Sudhi, Danny, do you want to introduce yourselves a little bit too?
Sure, yeah, I can go next. My name is Danny. I am a program manager also on the Office platform team, and I've been focusing particularly on the integration of Office scripts with Power Automate. So we'll have more on that later in the session.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Sudhi Ramamurthy. I'm also a program manager on the Office platform team. On today's session, I'll be talking about one of the new features related to the APIs that we introduced recently. And all three of us are really glad to be here. Thank you for organizing it and inviting us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you so much first for your enthusiasm and learning more about our products. Also, shout outs to Jan for giving some information about Office scripts in the previous section. And we're really excited to share our new features with you. As you might be able to tell, we've been pretty hard at work creating a new scripting tool that's easy to use for all Office users. And so today we're excited to show you that product and the latest developments to the feature. Okay, so during the intro, I will walk you through a couple different things. First, what is Office scripts? Why use Office scripts? And also how you can use Office scripts even just today. Cool. So Office scripts is a new feature that's within Excel on the web, and it's built with the goal of enabling Office users to automate their tasks anytime and anywhere. So that means that whether you consider yourself a novice or a professional at writing code, our feature is designed to help you reduce the repetitive tasks in your workflow. And the ways that we do this are, there's several useful tools. I'm going to go to Excel on the web just to show you exactly what those tools are. Let me just see if I can find my mouse for a second. Oh, where is that? All right, sorry, I think I might have closed out of the window. I got a little bit too excited.
We see your desktop now. All right, there it is.
Can you still see the screen with the, awesome. I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger and then go back to Excel.
Great.
All right. Cool. So this is Excel on the web, and our new feature lives on the Automate tab. So, all right, you can see that here. And there's three specific things I want to call out. So the first is the action recorder, which you can see here. And the action recorder is designed as an easy to use way to record your scripts without having to touch code at all. Next, we have the code editor, and that's really the place where the code of your scripts are stored. And so if we just click on these different things, you'll see that the task pane pops up. And you can easily navigate between these two to first code your scripts, but you can also just record scripts. There's two different options there. And then the third thing here is the gallery, where you can see all the different scripts that are affiliated with your workbook. Something to note here is that currently all these scripts are located on Excel on the web. We're looking into creating a desktop experience for this as well, and so that's something that you can note in the feedback session. We'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. Cool. So before I dive too deep into that, I'm going to share a little bit about the latest developments that we have on Office scripts. Okay, so as Sudhi mentioned, we have simplified APIs that you can use for the code editor. There's also Power Automate integration that Danny will be covering, and there's also script sharing, which we will show through the demos later on. So together, these tools are designed to enable you to make the scripts more simple, powerful, and impactful. So specifically with the simplified API, we want to make it easier for users who may be new to programming to learn and grow their skills. And then with the Power Automate integration, we'd like to help users harness the power of collaborative applications such as Teams, Outlook, SharePoint in your scripts, and Danny will talk a little bit more about that later. The last thing being the secure script sharing, so that will allow you to safely share your scripts with other users within your organization in a secure way. Okay, so why use Office scripts? So this is something that we talked a little bit about just earlier in the slides. Some other reasons that we want to highlight Office scripts as a solution to look into today. We designed this to be reflective of the realities of our modern workplace. So in this case, it's very collaborative and approachable for users. And you can see that with the sharing capabilities that we have. Eventually, we want this to be something that's cross-platform, so you can use it across different web browsers, different desktop applications. Another key element that's not highlighted in this graph specifically is that with the integration to Power Automate, you're able to gain access to our full cloud ecosystem. So that includes what I said earlier, like you're able to connect your script with different Microsoft tools. As you can see in this chart, we also strive to make Office scripts beneficial for all types of Office users, whether you're an end user trying to create scripts, an IT admin hoping to share scripts securely, or you're an organization that wants to promote collaborative and modern work environments in your company. Cool. So the next part, how can I use scripts? So the steps to getting started, I believe Jen covered this a little bit earlier. The IT admin, there's a couple of steps that you do in the admin portal to turn on Office scripts. And this is something that currently is available for any licenses that are above E3. And then that will allow you to kind of explore what we have in Office scripts through the Automate tab. That being said, there's also, you can just sign up for the developer pack on Microsoft 365, and that's something we'll link to later on in our presentation, so you can get a sense of what's currently available and how the current features that we have on Office scripts. Cool. So I'm going to pass it over to Sudhi next, I believe. And as we go through the next few slides, I do encourage you to take some time to think about how Office scripts can help you save time in your workflow, and also how we can make this even more of a useful tool for you. Cool. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Nancy. Let me share my desktop in a second here. So let me know if you're unable to see. So thanks, Nancy, for kind of providing the overview of the product. The one area that I want to focus on today is on the API surface that Office scripts offers. And recently we've done a bunch of work in this area, and then we are really excited that all that work is now available for everybody to use. So we did a refresh of a public preview version of Office scripts, and everything that I'm talking about here are already present in Office scripts, and you can actually use that today. So first of all, when we talk about Office scripts, what does it mean when we say, scripting? So in the scripting in this context, what it means is that Office scripts experience, as you saw, provides a TypeScript language-based scripting environment. So TypeScript language, as you may know, is a superset of JavaScript language. What it means is that JavaScript as a language is valid syntax in our environment. And really the benefit that the TypeScript offers is adding typings or the data type information for specific objects related to Excel. So this is really there to help one, understand what you're dealing with and help eliminate errors as you're authoring the script. So we get a lot of questions about, hey, what is TypeScript? What is JavaScript? But for all kind of practical purposes, you can think of this as a JavaScript environment with TypeScript offering some helpful typing and IntelliSense benefits. The code editor is really built into the web application, Excel web application, as you saw. And in addition to the ability to provide the code and the syntax highlighting, it offers the full breadth of IntelliSense that Excel API has to offer. So in essence, so when we say Office scripts API, what we mean is a set of interfaces that allows read and write operations with Excel workbook. So you can use these APIs in your code editor using the JavaScript TypeScript language. to interact with the workbook directly. And then the easiest way to get started is really to record your actions. That generates a script. And as Jan shown earlier, you can use that as a starting point. And from then on, you can run it or you can modify it to meet your needs, or simply you can create a new script from the scratch if you really know what you're doing, and then you have a very specific scenario in mind, and then you don't mind getting started on your own. So, so that's a brief introduction about what we mean by scripting and what the environment looks like, and where the TypeScript language fits in, and then what we mean by API. So when we say Office Scripts API, think of it as a library that we offer right within the code editor that allows you to interact with the workbook. Coming to the simplified API part. We recently upgraded our API model to make it easier to get started and automate your task. We had a previous version which allowed users to use Office.js in the Office Scripts environment. And it allowed a whole range of capabilities. And what we discovered was it was a little bit difficult to get started with. And you needed to understand some advanced topics of how the JavaScript interface works, and then how the asynchronous programming works, even for basic needs. So even simple scenarios for things like reading values or performing checks or going over collections of things such as tables or charts, and do some basic error validation. All these scenarios required that you understand the asynchronous programming concepts. So, so such scenarios shouldn't be hard to achieve and shouldn't require advanced knowledge, and especially for those who are closest to the business processes and wish to automate manual tasks. So we felt that we can do better and make Office Scripts API easier to understand for everyone, especially for those who are learning their way up from just recording actions to actually editing and making changes. So we want Office Scripts to be an environment where you can come in even without much programming knowledge, and then use recording as a stepping board to learning more advanced skill set. And we felt having a simplified API surface is going to be a key to achieve this goal. So our goal was really to lower the barrier of entry and get the interface to match the natural flow of how users think and interact with the workbook. So the new model offers the same set of features that we had earlier, but we made it much easier for you to begin your development experience. And it's now available for all users. So by default, if you use Office Scripts, you get the simplified API version, and it is available in public preview. So really, like one of the main goals that we have today is get you to take a look at this and try it out and let us know while we're in this preview period what you like and dislike about it, so that if there is anything that we can make adjustments to help improve the process. So that's really the key to our ask here. All right, so that's a little bit about the simplified API surface. Now, so what are some of the highlights? So what are the characteristics of the API surface that we offer? Based on our research and development, and also from a ton of feedback from the community, including many of you, we made some specific improvements. So first and foremost, the API can now be invoked synchronously. So that means no promises, no callback concepts are needed to interact with Office Scripts API for Excel. So if you're dealing anything to do with Excel objects, you can now execute your code synchronously. The API design offers pretty straightforward and simple patterns for getting and setting properties, reading through collections, and taking action one at a time, such as maybe you want to rename worksheets. We are offering few new APIs that should help interacting with simple range cell objects, or adding rows to table or columns to table simpler, because in the earlier model, it was a little bit hard to deal with because you had to deal with two-dimensional arrays for even things like a row or a single cell. So we offered some new APIs to make that the journey a little bit easier. We've also done work to improve the performance in some cases, such as, let's say you're doing series of write operations. We optimize it so that we make less round trips and we do it as a single round trip. And this is one area where we will continue to invest more and we'll investigate. And your feedback is going to be key to us. We offer some best practices and things to do and avoid, sort of tips that can help improve your performance. So please do check out our documentation site that I will showcase a little bit later. So if you run into your scripts really running slow, reach out to us, read that documentation, and if it still doesn't help, reach out to us, and we're really curious to see in what situations you get into performance issues. And all of this, as I mentioned earlier, is backed by our IntelliSense. And this is really the kind of the key through which you can understand our API, the details about it, how to use it, and we're also thinking of making some improvements there to the IntelliSense so that you can have a better experience dealing with it. All right, so so that's all about background of what scripting environment is, what do we mean when we say, hey, we simplified the API surface, and what are some of the characteristics. Now, so what does the script look like? So first and foremost, there is a main function. I don't know if you noticed that in the previous demos. So there is a main function. This is present in all the scripts, and it is required function. So think of it as a required function that the system will call as an entry point when you run the script. So when you record or when you create a blank new script from the scratch, we automatically generate this function body for you. So all you need to do is really like either start adding your code, or if you record it, all that is present for you automatically. So next thing to note is that we provide a parameter called workbook. So as you can see here, it is a top level object that the main function receives as a parameter. And it is the top level object, and it sits at the top of the hierarchy, using which you can then access a whole suite of APIs that we offer. So workbook is really sort of the key entry point. So all your interaction begins at the workbook level. So we give that to you so you can kind of start using that in your code. And you might have noticed this other thing called Excel script.workbook. So this, what it is it is typing. So this is saying, hey, the workbook is of type workbook, Excel script.workbook. So it helps Office scripts to know that you're interacting with an Excel object. For the most part, we will infer what that type is, so you don't really need to do anything. If you're writing a new function, we require that you provide this, and it's very easy to discover and use that. And the code itself goes right into the body of the main function. So this is when you have a unit of work that begins with the script at the top and then ends when the script ends. Now, so let's look at another scenario that really highlights the power of Office scripts. So this is when you want to connect your Excel script or your Excel workbook with other parts of your workflow. So you may have a specific scenario in mind where you want to plug in Excel workbook of the data, some processing of the calculation power of Excel within your workflow. Now we made that part really easy. So what it means is that the information can now flow into your script and can flow out of your script quite easily. So compared to the previous code snippet that I showed, there are a couple of other additions that I want to highlight. First is the input. So you'll see that in the main function, in addition to workbook, which is always present, has to be the first parameter, we allow you to input other information that you think you're going to receive. So this makes connecting your script quite easy, which means imagine you have an input that you're going to receive from maybe a previous process or a previous script. You can use that. You can define that, hey, here's something that I'm going to receive. And next, you can declare that, hey, as part of this script, I'm going to do a unit of work and I'm going to return some output. So what this is saying is that I'm going to return something out. And in the script, let's say, this table is using the input string and it's adding a row. And it's, let's say you're doing some processing that I've not mentioned here what it is, but let's say you're doing some set of process to not only use the data, but also crunch some numbers or take advantage of Excel's calculation engine. And now you have the result ready in order for the next process or maybe next script to use, and you can simply return it. And using this simple technique will help you connect your scripts to other parts of the system and really string together a productive workflow. And we'll see how this is actually can be put to practice in the next part of the demo that Danny is going to showcase. All right, so this is sort of a simple slide describing the main scenario where you have a script doing a unit of work. And then the second scenario is where it is doing the work either by taking an input from another script or another process, and optionally it might be returning some results. And we'll see how to actually help Excel be part of your entire workflow and where Power Automation comes into the picture. All right, so you might be kind of next wondering, how do I organize this code, right? So you can have as many scripts as you want. And an individual script has to be contained in a single file. So the thing that you saw in the editor, so all that is part of the same file. In order to organize, you can simply write functions to help organize your code, and you can break up your logic into many functions that can then be called or reused from different parts of the script. The main function itself is always required and it's always present. In this scenario, I have written a function called update range. And what it does is it takes in the like a starting cell, and then it takes in the data that it wants to update with. And then it's going to compute what that target range address is, and it's going to update the range and then return that resized range back to the caller. So here, really the key things to note are, I can call this function from my main function or any other function that the main function calls. And then the function itself, you can write logic that you want to reuse, and you can optionally receive input or optionally return output that you can use in the calling function. So this is one way using which you can figure out, hey, I want to now have a serial script. I want to organize it in a way that I can easily break down the script into. All right, so hope that's helpful in helping you understand how to take a script that is one big file and also use the power of functions to organize your code, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is what are the key API patterns that we have? So that is, at a high level, what do you need to kind of understand from a API patterns perspective, so that way you start feeling comfortable with it. So we talked about the main function, which is really the entry point for all your script. And then the workbook object that the main function receives really is at the top of the object hierarchy. And there are APIs that allows you to read and write, such as maybe range values or chart title or table header row. So this is sort of set of read-write operation APIs using which you can manipulate and read. The next, like method calls, are really a way to manipulate an object. Maybe you're clearing a range or setting a position of a chart. So these are all methods that the object may offer. And next is sort of the collection. So collection is really, think of it as like an array of things like your tables and charts and worksheets that are in your workbook. So you need to know like how to actually retrieve these and then manipulate them, navigate them, and perform some operations on it. And then maybe you want to check, hey, does my thing that I want to interact with, like an object, say worksheet or table, exists or not? So these are all like really like high-level patterns that you will see in any script. And again, I think the IntelliSense wheel is going to help you discover these. It might look somewhat like scary at the beginning, but once you start interacting or you record a script and see that, it becomes a lot easier. And the IntelliSense is really there to help you discover this as you go along. Now, I talked about some of the API patterns in the previous slide. So let's look at this in a script. So this is a very simple script that takes in, it reads a worksheet and then reads a chart information and sets its position and chart title. So first, like I mentioned, workbook is at the top, using which you can get to other objects such as retrieving worksheet named customer. So customer here is a string that is a parameter that the get worksheet API retrieves, takes in. And then what this API does is it retrieves the worksheet and gives that to the sheet object. The API model also allows you to travel through the hierarchy to get to the object you're interested in. For instance, I'm getting a chart object of the worksheet, and then it's title object, and then the text, all in a single line. So if you know that, hey, here is a hierarchy that I know how to get to, and I want to do something with it. Here, I just want to get the text of the title object. So you can do that all in a single line. You can also have intermediary objects. So you can reuse that. So in this next line, I'm reading a chart object using the get chart method available on the worksheet. Now I'm doing that because I want to reuse that. So I'm going to use the same chart object, get the title, and set the text of the title. And I can reuse that chart object to position. So set position is a method offered by the chart object. It looks very much similar to your setter function, such as set text. But the methods can do kind of some more advanced things, like let's say you want to clear a range, but you only want to clear formatting, but not the values. So method offers various parameters through using which you can customize what you want to do with it. And then the next thing I want to call out is the collection. So this line shows that I'm getting off of the same chart object, getting its series collection. So what I get back here is a series array, and each of the instance of the array is going to be one chart series. I'm using a simple for loop to iterate over each of the series. So this is just a simple for loop. JavaScript offers few advanced array functions like map and for each, but I usually prefer to just use for loop whenever it's possible because it's simple to read. So you can here what I'm doing is I'm iterating over one series object at a time and just logging its name. But I can use this to maybe do some write operation on the chart series. So this script here, though it's a very simple one, gives you pretty much sort of the most of the pattern that you're going to see in the recorded script or when you write it, and the things that you will need to be aware of when you actually write your script. So hopefully that has given you a taste of what the API surface looks like. So let us know what you think about this pattern as you record and interact. We are really curious to know how you actually find this. What parts are beneficial, what parts are confusing, where can we actually help make things better. So let's see, do a quick time check. I want to kind of go back to my Excel here. Want to point out that as part of the code editor, which is like really the code editor here, you can really easily get started with the sample section. So here we allow you to view the sample script, and you can make your own copy of the script, or you can just run it. You can make a copy right here, and you can make edits, or you can run the script directly. So this is really a great way to get started. And another part that I use most is, let's say I'm stuck here, I don't know how to do a next thing. I'll simply like go and record the actions, and I can, let's say, I want to do something here, filter, and you can see, you can perform those actions and record this, and you can kind of edit this and say, oh, okay, here's how we actually do a filter, and there is a get filter method on the column, and you can call apply filter method and pass in this parameter, and I can then reuse this code on your previous script that you may have recorded, or simply use that for just learning purposes. So I'd love to showcase more. In the limited time, what I'll say is, like, we have documented all the scenarios that you need to get started with in our documentation site. You can learn about the basic concepts. We have a tutorial that you can help as a starting point. Then, like I said, we have some troubleshooting information, some best practice information. And then in the future, we want to add more scenarios. So as part of the survey link that we're going to send at the end, we'd like to really know, hey, what other information that we could provide and offer to help guide your experience. All right, so that's all I had to showcase, and I will now hand it over to Danny for his part of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Sudhi, and thank you very much everyone else for joining today. So the part of the presentation that I'm going to be going through is the integration of Office scripts with Power Automate. So just for some overarching context, I believe most people tend to be at least like cursorily familiar with what Power Automate is and what you can do with it. But this is the landing page of what was formerly known as Microsoft Flow. Did we lose my projection here? Okay, well, I'm going to assume it's still working unless Sudhi or Nancy tell me otherwise, but I kind of lost my screen share for a second here. But anyway.
We can still see.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
see your mouse.
So Power Automate is a tool that allows you to connect a whole bunch of different services, either Microsoft or otherwise, for the purposes of like automating things like sending out an email, importing data, creating and like adjusting new spreadsheets. You can work with things like Twitter, Google Calendar, a whole wide variety of like really diverse different services, including running things like the AI builder, which allows you to like do things like classifying sentiment. You might imagine that somebody would import like a whole bunch of tweets about a topic and kind of classify them as to whether or not, say, a tweet about your company's brand was inflammatory or negative, and then to do something with those or to respond to them. Some of the types of connectors that are available, you guys can see here. As you can tell, based on my scroll bar on the right, there is an incredible number of these. The connectors team here at Microsoft has done a great job of creating and maintaining a bunch of different connectors for the underlying APIs, so that if you're using Power Automate, you really don't have to think all that much about what's happening behind the scenes to talk to all these services. You simply have to use the Power Automate editor to connect whatever it is that you want to use for your scenario. So what we're going to be looking at today is actually the Excel Online connector, excuse me. And just to give you guys kind of an idea of what this used to be able to do, since this connector has actually been around for quite some time and is used by many, many different users and companies. Previously, you could mostly only work with worksheets and tables, either by getting and creating additional worksheets or by having an existing table already in your document, already in your spreadsheet, and then modifying it or getting a value from some row. So it was actually like a moderately usable experience in the past. You could effectively turn any spreadsheet into an ad hoc database. But the thing that you're able to do now via Office scripts and this additional brand new run script action on the Excel connector is if there is now an action or a thing that you can accomplish manually within Excel for the web, you can now automate that and have it run without ever having to directly open Excel for the web manually, just by calling whatever Office script it was that you created to automate that task. And it'll just happen without you having to do much to intervene. This can occur on a timed trigger. It can happen like in response to receiving an email or a tweet. There's a whole bunch of other awesome ways that you can trigger and run flows through Power Automate. And as of the addition of this action, you can now accomplish pretty much anything that you wanted to in Excel. So to talk a little bit about the scenario that I'm going to be showing you guys today, I'm actually going to start by kind of showing you what the end result is going to look like. So right here, we have a status report email called GitHub status report 2020-7/23, today's date. And it just contains a friendly message, maybe updating or informing the team as to what the contents of this email are, as well as 3 images of 2 of the tables that are in the spreadsheet that I'm going to show you guys in a second, as well as a chart illustrating the most frequent bug labels that show up in this particular repository set of issues. So I don't know how familiar you guys are actually with GitHub. I realized that was kind of an assumption that I made going into this, but suffice it to say that there is a repository of code on GitHub in order to like create and manage a really popular variant of JavaScript or a superset of JavaScript called TypeScript. It's also the language that we recommend you use within the Office scripts editor. It has a whole bunch of really awesome features and makes things much easier to understand in the JavaScript space. But what I've done here is I've collected all of the issues for kind of a given time period, or just the top 30 that are returned, created a table that counts up each of the label types that appear on these issues, and then created a graph. And this email is what we're going to send out, and it goes out to my account in this demo tenant, as well as some kind of fake team members that I've made up here. The final thing that will happen in this scenario as well is also this kind of idea of an approval flow. Basically, this scenario is actually a simplified version of a real one that is used by several teams now across different organizations within Microsoft. And what tends to happen is somebody will be interested in generating and emailing out a given report on, say, a weekly basis. And prior to sending it, usually most people are quite interested in being able to review the thing before confirming that it's ready to be sent out and then sending that email. It's sort of like a last minute sanity check that makes people feel a lot more comfortable with the automation experience. And the fact that they're able to get this kind of approval option and a sample of the mail before it goes out helps to create a lot more confidence in the experience and not be like worried at all as to whether or not you'll be emailing, say, a 50-person team something that is wildly inaccurate or incorrect. So with that, I'm actually going to switch back over to Excel for the web. And what you'll see here in front of me is an example run yesterday of the issues that show up from this GitHub issue list, kind of contained here in a like Excel table. I've grabbed a couple of the fields that showed up in the like network request that I made to the GitHub API. I've created this table that just kind of like sums up each of the like different issue label types that are available here. You'll notice that while I could have done this via some kind of like formula, I've actually chosen to do it via an Office script simply because I found like the JavaScript easier to kind of all do at once. And then finally, here I have the chart that shows label frequency for each of these labels, as I've kind of described a couple of times now. So hopefully this is all starting to like come together and make a little bit of sense. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to open the code editor and I'm going to show you guys sort of a brief overview of what this script will do and then demonstrate it running. I don't want to spend too much time going in depth as to what the actual logic does and why I've written things a certain way, just because Sudhi spent a whole bunch of time discussing like, the setup of the brand new simplified APIs, and because this is probably something that could use an entire demo session by itself. So to spare you guys all of the like TypeScript and JavaScript intricacies, I'm going to be going pretty quickly through what each of the sections do and then running it. And if you guys are really interested in like kind of inspecting this in depth, we're potentially planning to release some of these demos as a blog post on the Microsoft 365 developer blog coming up in the near future. So if you're interested in the details of how things worked here, stay tuned for that. So firstly, going through these sections again, I'm sort of tracking the current dates so that I can name whatever sheet I create and then like filter on the issues potentially. I didn't actually do that here, but I've used it to generate a new sheet every single day such that if somebody wanted to go into this spreadsheet and check what the historical set of issues and labels and like chart looked like, it would always be available for them there. And you might imagine that somebody would run this on a daily basis at most. What I've also done is that if the date is actually the same as a spreadsheet that existed previously, it simply deletes the old version of that day's spreadsheet and updates it with the new information. So the second section that I have here, and I'm actually going to leave the screen scrolled so that you guys can see the function signature at the top. One of the things that Sudhi may have hinted at a little bit, but I'll talk about a bit more, especially as we go look at the Power Automate flow, is the every single Office script has the option to include parameters in the function signature. So what this does is, in the case of something that's run from the Excel spreadsheet, actually doesn't really have much impact at all on the way that the script runs. The main function is simply called, and then all of the logic that's contained inside it executes, and no parameters will actually be passed to the script at the moment. However, if you include parameters within your script as you're writing it inside Excel for the web, these parameters will actually create like fields which allow you to pass in data from Power Automate directly into your script that will be running in Excel for the web via this run script action. So I've included these parameters here such that if somebody wanted to designate a different date than the current date, then they could. But if it wasn't actually defined on run, then this makes sure that the current date is used instead. So it's just new date by itself. I've also included a query results parameter, and this is kind of the more complicated but more important one. And the reason for this like funky block second after the date section. So what I've done is if somebody wanted to pass the results of a GitHub API query, checking a repo for issues, directly into this function, then it would simply use the parsed version of that value. So I have this object right here called the issues list. It's a list object that will eventually contain each of the different rows for these like query results of these issues. If this query results object is not defined, if I'm not using Power Automate and I'm actually trying to run this script as a test, then what I've done is I actually create a fetch request that sends a network request to the GitHub API, targeting the org and the repository name that I'm interested in. So this is Microsoft TypeScript. And then the results of that are used sort of in the same way as the query results would be if I had not been calling fetch directly. Last thing on this, the reason for calling fetch here, but instead passing in the query results as a parameter in the Power Automate case, is the fetch request works from the Excel for the web client, since the Excel for the web client will respect all of the firewall settings that a organization might have, since your browser will respect those. For security reasons, one of the things that we've done is we've taken steps to make fetch and other network request approaches not usable through the run script action, since that's all running on like the Power Automate and like Azure infrastructure behind it in order to make sure that you don't need to open your workbook directly to run a script on it. And for that reason, we've again tried to like make sure that network requests aren't really something that you need to think about for the time being. since in the future we might enable some way to accomplish things like that. But for now, we don't want to like freak any organizations out by adding some potential like outbound networking like issue. So that's something to be aware of as you're like thinking about how to use Office scripts for yourself. But this kind of intricacy is specific to using like this direct GitHub request and for testing purposes, since Power Automate behaves ever so slightly differently than attended. Skimming through these last bits, since I'm realizing I'm getting a little bit long-winded for the time we have remaining. So what I do here is I actually create a brand new sheet every time this script is run. I name it based on the date, and since there are potential like naming collisions as I create a new sheet and rename it, if there is another sheet with the same date name, then I just delete the old sheet and leave the new one. Then I activate the sheet so that the newest one is the one that's actually showing. Turn off the grid lines just for aesthetic reasons. And then here, I actually use a couple really nice features of JavaScript, have my like headers for the table defined, and I'm able to grab a whole bunch of different select components that are available within this issues list. Because within the issues list, there's actually a whole bunch of objects, and I don't actually need every single field that's available in return from the GitHub API. I only need these select few. So I've used this map function to simply grab all the components that I actually want. I log that to console, and then I end up filling a table with a custom function that I wrote called createTableAt. And that basically just creates a table on a given sheet at some starting row and column with the headers that I made up there, and the issue table values. Here's me doing like a whole bunch of column resizes just so you guys can see everything. And then finally getting to the end of this, this is just more of the same to create the labels table. And then I've also created this label chart. I'm gonna run this real quick just so you guys can see what this looks like. As you can tell, there's like some output, generates the new sheet, adds the table, kind of like undraws itself. And then here we go. We have a brand new Thursday, July 23rd, 2020 sheet for these GitHub issues on the TypeScript repository. Here's also a chart. As you can tell, it is actually specific to the day. So some of the things have moved around, and the current, like most common one, is bugged by a long shot. So it looks like people have been discovering quite a few different bugs in the past day or so. So something for the TypeScript team to go look into, which I'm sure they're all on top of. Secondly, I want to show you one more script, and I'm going to move back to the Power Automate side for the final bit of this demo. Try to contain myself to only a couple more minutes. So I have one more script called Get Tables and Charts. This is actually a pretty straightforward script, but it's something that adds a lot of really nice capability and power to this potential Power Automate in Excel scenario. What I'm able to do here is I'm actually grabbing the image of both tables and this chart by calling the get image function on like the chart that I have here, as well as the get range command, which allows you to, again, get an image of a particular range. And I'm getting the range from each of the two tables that I care about here. Finally, this extra bit, image prefix that I'm appending, or to the beginning, prepending, I suppose, is a way that we can actually reference the image, which is going to be encoded in base 64, so like as some giant, crazy, like ASCII character string, and then use it in an HTML-defined email. So you'll see more of that in a sec, but the reason to add this is so that it'll show up within our email as we pass this like raw image data returned from get image. So right here, I can run it if you like, just so you can see what it looks like. As described, it's like kind of this giant blob of really confusing characters, but that's going to help us when we go to generate our email in about a second here. So finally, this is actually my kind of a flow that I've constructed for this scenario. Rather than recreating it from scratch, I'm actually just going to walk you guys through each of the steps, since I'm, again, running out of time. But firstly, we have a manual trigger. This is something that you might use if you're going to call a flow from the Flow phone application. Alternatively, in my case, I've used it here just because it's easier to test with, and so that my test flow doesn't accidentally run every single day at, say, 9 a.m. Here, as I kind of discussed in the previous section about fetch, I've used an HTTP request connector that allows me to make a GET request to the GitHub API. So that's something that you can find more about on GitHub site. I'm not going to go too into it, but for now, you can suffice it to say I'm basically accessing a repo created by Microsoft called TypeScript, and I want to get its issues. So that's going to be returning exactly what I get returned back by making the manual fetch call back here in our original import GitHub data script. So you can see it's kind of the same idea. Something that you might imagine replacing this with for other scenarios and accomplish different things, something like Twitter action to get tweets about a hashtag. There's an SQL database connector, SQL, excuse me, which will allow you to connect to any on-premises SQL database. That'll be highly valuable for people who have to work with internal data and information. There are Power Query connectors, so that'll help shore up some of the Power Query stuff that a lot of people have commented they wish there was more richness in terms of the Excel for the web experience. I believe there should be more stuff coming up there in the near future, but for now, the Power Query connector is a good workaround. But highly recommend kind of playing with this idea of where you get your data source. And as I mentioned, you also can pass in the query results, and I've chosen to pass in the date that this was manually triggered as my arguments for this run script action. So since this script has these parameters or arguments defined in its function signature, the integration that we've put together with Power Automate is smart enough to know that it accepts values for these two parameters. And when you select your script, if it has parameter values defined, then it'll actually give you fields which you can use to input Power Automate data from previous connector. So finally, third, I have a get table and chart images run script action. These are both run script actions that I've renamed, by the way, just to kind of give you guys a clear idea of what's happening. The get table and chart images connector actually returns 3 objects. And here I've referenced an object coming out of this get table and chart images called results.labels table. This one is the results labels chart and result issues table. So these will show up as long as you have a script that's actually returning values. As you can see here, I've actually made sure that at the very end of my main function, I have a object that comes back that contains, oops, sorry, not at the end of the import main function, at the get tables and charts one. I return this images object that has, as you saw in the flow, issues table source, labels table source, labels chart source. So the reason for using this compose block is actually just that I don't have to rename this. And yeah, I think Sudhi's given me the, hey, hurry up, Danny, warning. So to summarize, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we have a minute and a half left.
All right, no worries. Then for the sake of the conclusion that I'm sure Sudhi is ready to close off with, here's my approval thing, which allows you to confirm via email. Here is what's sent to everybody if you confirm, and then here is what is sent to only you if you actually reject the flow and choose to not send it out to the broader team. So I'm going to have this run and then give Sudhi a chance to talk real quick while I'm waiting for the mails to show up. But it takes a minute or two for the thing to process. And then you basically end up with your daily or weekly report that you can approve to send to the rest of the team or reject and manually edit and adjust and update. So I'll hand the mic back over to Sudhi, but I guess keep showing my screen unless there's something you wanted to share at the very end.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So I think a couple of things. So I wanted to call out for folks who are on the call that we pasted a link to a survey. It'd be awesome if you could take this short survey and let us know what your feedback, and it will really help our prioritization quite a lot. It should take very little time, so hopefully in the next break that you have, you'll be able to finish that and provide us your valuable feedback. The second thing is there's a Office 365 developer program that is really key to how we communicate with customers, and it also gives you other benefits like getting a developer tenant. So I'm pasting a link here. So please follow that and join that. It's a great way to stay plugged in. And we really appreciate the opportunity today. And as we see the script, the workflow ending, and hopefully that's giving us what the intention was, which is an email. Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, so feel free to type away your questions. So we'll stay on here for a second on the Teams chat, and we'll take your questions. Then if you have anything more specific, please send that in the form that you sent.
Yeah, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining today and for your time. And as Sudhi mentioned, we would really appreciate it if you were to take the time to fill out the survey that we've sent around, especially because if this is something that you find really interesting and something that you'd love to see like specific features in the near future, or just want to talk to us about like how excited you are and how you might want to use it, we would absolutely love to hear from you. And it has some real impact on where we'll be going with the product coming up soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sudhi, Nancy, and Danny.
Yep. Thank you.
As always, we have around 5 minutes before the next session starts. Our next presenter is Echo. Echo